Welcome to Two Tall Guys Talking Sales. I'm your host for this session. I'm Sean.
And I'm Kevin.
And together we're going to talk about a unique problem that you might be having in your sales process and your sales world. This 15 minutes is designed for salespeople, sales managers, and CEOs of the company that are trying to increase their revenue and trying to be more productive in your sales processes. So let's get started.
Last week on Two Tall Guys Talking Sales, we were joined by another tall guy, Tom Morgan, who was a former basketball coach at the collegiate level. So maybe we can dig into a little bit of that in his background. We ended last week's conversation about coaching the last minute play. I was using the analogy of basketball since I love basketball. But the last minute play for sports is one thing, but the last minute play for sales is it's the end of the quarter, end of the year. How are you going to get there? How are you going to diagram it out? Who's going to do what? How are we going to get these deals closed? And I kind of interrupted Tom on his conversation because we ran out of time. So Tom, the floor is yours. Talk about coaching the end of the quarter, coaching the end of the year, and give us some insight there.
Well, I'm going to probably start at the beginning because it's the end of the game, the last 10 seconds. If that's the first time your team is hearing what they need to do or what their roles are, your chances of being successful are probably less. But it starts in the first of the year, the first practice with the conditioning. And are we getting ourselves conditioned for the season, for what's up ahead for us? Are we practicing the fundamentals? Are we getting the key details right? When I coached basketball, every practice we did the three-man weave. And parents used to get upset, like, why are we focusing on that and not focusing on plays and all these other things? I'm like, well, because if my team can't run a three-man weave efficiently and effectively, then I don't know how we can run plays. Because running up the court at the same time, passing the ball to a target, and then completing it with a layup just seems to me like that's fundamental. So it's focusing on those fundamentals. It's like shooting free throws at the end of practice when you're exhausted, because that last 10 seconds a game, you're going to be exhausted. So that's where it all starts. And I think it's very similar for a business too. It's those fundamentals you start to practice, is those key details you get into your sales process, that those are the things when you get to the end of a quarter, you're relying on best practices. You're relying on the relationships that you've built. You're relying on the good work that you've done. Just like in a sports team, you're going to put the ball in the hands of your best player, but your support players are going to set the pick, or they're going to pass the ball into the best location. I'll tell a story of the final 10 seconds of a basketball game, and it was when Villanova won the national championship, I think about 2 or 3 years ago. And I think Jenkins hit the three-point shot with no time left. It wasn't the shot, but if you were a basketball fan, it was the pass. The person who threw them that pass hit him right in stride, caught the ball, and was able to follow through in a shot and save that split second. It was one of the best passes I've ever seen. But as a coach, I guess you realize that. So maybe as the scene was this guy hit the shot, to me it was that person threw the pass. I think it's the same thing in sales. As you set yourself up for the end of a quarter, is everyone playing their role? Is everyone putting the opportunity into the right positioning? Is everyone getting their information updated in the CRM so that key decisions can be made at the end of a quarter? Because at the end of a quarter, your customer knows that there's pressure. Their customer knows that there's a timeline. So you have to be really efficient. You have to be really organized. You have to really be showing what the need is for the urgency for that deal to happen now. And if you're not prepared for that, number one, you're going to be giving away either more discount, or you're going to be losing deals, or you're going to be setting yourself up to a position that every single quarter is going to be a fire drill. And the last I checked, there's only 4 quarters in a year. We're not adding a fifth quarter. So just like in sports, you've got to get yourself set up at the beginning of the year, really have all the roles clarified, your team fit, fundamentally sound, and then when those decisions come up at the end of a quarter, you're ready to execute flawlessly and support each other along the way. Because mistakes happen, but if you have the fundamentals set up, you can quickly respond and react.
All about the foundation and fundamentals. I had a coach growing up. I mean, this is a Two Tall Guys Talking Sales. So for those of you listening and never met me, I'm 6.5 feet tall, right? So I got a lot of drills in dribbling because I could never quite do it effectively. I was never going to make it to the college level. But to punctuate what you said there, it's the foundational fundamentals. It's the three-man weave. It's the defensive stance. All those things that we can translate from sports and background, whether you're a player or a watcher, you see doing the easy things well translates into doing the hard things more effectively, because all of those foundational core skills in sales, it's prospecting, it's outreach, it's smiling. It is everything from the way you present yourself. Sean, you and I have had some separate discussions about, hey, how are we going to show up for this meeting? Sean, you give the example of the business card that's all crinkly and been in your wallet for 3 years kind of thing, versus showing up with a digital presence. And we as sales leaders under the Sales Xceleration banner, we show up as a brand, and we all go to market individually, but how we show up is as important as how we practice. So thanks for punctuating that. So if we're talking to the sales leaders, managers, CEOs, owners, what are we telling them first? Like I've got my method, but I'm curious to know, Tom, what's your method for showing up with that sales leader, manager, or CEO to have that first conversation?
Yeah, there's a number of different things, Kevin, that I like to work on. But one thing that I focus on pretty early is a simple thing, basically language. What's our glossary of terms? Because as we all know, you go in and you walk into a sales organization and somebody's got a hot lead, a warm lead, and a cold lead. I'm like, somebody define what those three are. And in some cases, it's just, I don't know, it's just personal. So it's like, all right, no, we're going to get in a room and we're going to get all of our language set up. So this is what a hot lead is. This is what a warm lead is. And they're going to be clearly defined. Because one of the things I find that sales teams get way off course, and organizations of all kinds, is that when they aren't using a consistent company language, when they aren't using the same terms to describe all the same activities, and it's mind-boggling. But I think sometimes people get so entrenched in just how they do things, and I know what Sean meant by that. I know what a hot lead is to Sean, but that's not the same thing to Kevin. You're actually starting to manage multiple personalities. You're not managing a team. You're managing individuals. And I think one thing you learn is that the best way for a team to be effective is through leadership. You lead a team. You manage the process. So part of getting the process right is getting all the terms right, getting those terms correctly categorized into a CRM, and then managing that accordingly.
I just remember back when I was a coach, and definitely back when I was a player, we used to do the same thing over and over again. And the number of times I played football and I played basketball primarily, the number of times that we had to practice a right-hand layup and get that form just right, or the left-hand layup, because most of us, of course, are right-handed, the left-handed layup, or the number of times that we had to practice at a free throw line, how are we going to set ourselves up and have a great free throw, because it's so important at the end of a game. Or just when I was doing football, the number of times I was practicing a block or practicing a tackle. So a lot of those were, in my terms today, are role playing. The ability to do it over and over again, make mistakes in practice so that I didn't make that same mistake in the game. So how does role playing play a factor in the way you lead your sales teams at your customers now?
I mean, we role play out constantly. And I think one of the keys, and just like in sports, is trying to find creative ways to role play. Because I think the team, everybody wants to be the buyer and they want to give the sales reps a hard time. So I'm always looking for, just like I did when I was a coach, because you are very repetitious every week in all the activities you do, and you're trying to build the fundamentals. So I kind of try to create some really fun scenarios in the role play, actually we have tag team role play is one of the games I like to play, where the sales team's in a room, and if someone's struggling, you can tag out and someone can come in. And I think the sales teams really enjoy that because it becomes collaborative. You get to learn best practices. So if Kevin is and Sean are role playing, when Sean hits Kevin with an objection, Kevin's struggling, he can tag out, I can come in. And so we do a lot of role playing that way as a way to learn best practices and keep the team motivated. But role playing is absolutely critical. I think what you've got to do is you got to put the time and effort into that, just like you do anything else. To just go into a room and say, all right, Kevin, you're going to sell this product to Sean. Sean, you're the buyer. If you're not creative with it and don't make it interactive and don't make it something that the sales team enjoys, then role playing gets a negative perception or a negative view from the sales team. So I think one of the keys, and I think that's one thing we do as fractional sales leaders, like you guys, I've had every job. I've been a sales rep, I've been a key account rep, I've been a district manager. I have empathy for like the salespeople and kind of how they view things like role playing. Like, oh, this could be boring. I always try to come at that with the salesperson's perspective that this is a great opportunity. This can be an enjoyable experience. This is going to help you get better. And the scenarios that we create they're going to come up, and when they come up, you're going to call me. And I've had sales reps in my job now call me after they've had an actual situation that was consistent with our role play and say like, Tom, I can't believe it, but that persona that we set up and we role played on, I just met her and I just signed the deal because I knew kind of what she was thinking and what she was doing. I'm like, I'll never. I tell that story all the time because this guy was, his name was Roy, and I was like, Roy, I mean, that's why we do it. That's why we do the work. And he was so excited about it because that persona is something we practiced. And so when they start to see the results, but I think the thing with role playing is as a sales leader inside your company, put the thought into making it work. Just don't put it on an agenda at a sales meeting saying from 2 to 2:30 we're going to role play. Put the work in to create the scenarios to create the role play that's going to be something that means something to the team and that they can enjoy and leverage later in their actual sales calls.
That's fantastic. And for those of you who are driving right now, listening to this, star this episode. There are like 5 actionable things you can do tomorrow as a salesperson, leader, or a coach inside your organization. Go back and listen to last week's as well, where we talked about role clarity. We talked about dictionaries. We talked about tag teaming, types of role playing. In episodes past, we've also talked about the 3-person role play where you've got a customer, a seller, and an observer. So you can do that role play switching. So anyway, there's a lot of actionable meat in this episode that you can really pull back from. So, Tom, we're starting to get towards our 15 minutes. So, with that recap, can you tell people how to get in touch with you and maybe one of the things you're working on right now as a sales leader that could apply to all small business owners?
Sure. Yeah. So you can reach me. I'm part of the Sales Xceleration organization, like Kevin and Sean. So you can reach me at Morgan, Morgan, at salesxceleration.com, or you can find me on the Sales Xceleration website. And some of the things I'm working on now, it really focuses around sales strategy, sales structure, sales process. That's where a lot of the work comes in. And I think what's worked for sales organizations for the last 5 years, I think people are looking out further. What's the structure need to look like? What's the organization? So a lot of my work right now is on sales structure for the future. What do teams need to look like? How do we continue to scale? I'm in Maine, and in Maine, we have the oldest workforce, and we are the oldest state in the country. So our workforce is very diverse, but there's a lot of sales reps that are in the last 5 or 6 years of their career. So, I've really built a specialty for me in helping organizations kind of build that structure of the future, being mindful that you want your salespeople to stay as long as possible. And most of the CEOs I work with want their salespeople to leave on their own terms. But we're actually doing a lot of work on what's the evolution look like and creating new roles to bring in salespeople at an entry level that potentially can replace our people 3-5 years down the road. And it's working quite well, and it's kind of enjoyable for me, especially in family businesses because there's so much of the legacy there. But I think what sales organizations look like in 3 to 5 years is going to be a lot different. And using some of the support that all of us do and dealing with a lot of different organizations to come up with different ideas and unique ways to look at things. So that's where my focus has been now on those types of organizations.
Fantastic. Well, Tom, it's been a jewel having you on here today, and I think it's so appropriate that you see the trajectory of the workforce and how important it becomes now for things like you described, coaches with role clarity, a common sales language, actionable pieces of prep and practice and day in, day out kind of tactical support. So, Tom, thank you so much. And don't forget to look up Tom Morgan on LinkedIn as well. As another great way to get in touch with him and his content. Look up his articles. He's written some thought leadership pieces that will be valuable to you and your team. This wraps up another episode. We're right here at 15 minutes. Tom, thanks again for your last 2 weeks of sharing your brain with the world.
Thank you very much. Enjoyed it.
And that's a wrap. Thanks again for joining Kevin and Sean on Two Tall Guys Talking Sales. Tune in every Tuesday, or when our podcast drops every Tuesday at 4:30, wherever you consume your podcast. And don't miss our monthly CEO workshop, where we unpack some of the big CEO questions facing your business. Until next time, we're looking forward to seeing you. Happy selling.